Apologize to everyone in YouTube and Facebook because I thought I was live all day yesterday or during my time yesterday and I wasn't. Look, my name is Misha. I did a weird thing. Let's try this again. Small cats, look at this. I apparently was recording a video instead of going live. So we're about to fix that over on TikTok. And then we'll get this thing moving. Ugh, so sorry, you guys. Now we're back on. Okay, let's go live and do this thing. So we'll start all over. Good morning, everybody. It's Misha. And I am really here because I got really sick. I got a lot better. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I help people understand insulin resistance and more importantly, what we need to do to overcome it. And then I share with you a protocol that helped me overcome my insulin resistance. So along the way, I link in all of this other stuff because most of us are suffering and we don't know why. Our doctors haven't been able to fix it. We're getting more and more medications and yet we're not getting better. Well, if we understood that almost every disease and disorder that we have today links back to insulin resistance or is caused by insulin resistance, we might have a big key into fixing our health. And that's why I do what I do. So I want to talk about the thyroid today, but more specifically because I talked about the thyroid last week and I cycle through these topics. But so let's recap what I talked about last week. I want to talk about Hashimoto's in particular today. I've had a number of people ask me about Hashimoto's and how are these women, especially because Hashimoto's affects more than 80% of Hashimoto's patients are women. So it really doesn't exclude men, but it definitely hits women harder. So the women that I've had that have had Hashimoto's and have gotten better by addressing their insulin resistance, we're going to go over some of the reasons why that's likely happening so you can understand that this protocol that I talk about and these steps that I talk about really do work. And we just need to understand the root cause of these diseases. Okay. So last week when I talked about thyroid, what I want to say is we talked about hypothyroidism. I talked about the thyroid hormones of TSH, T4, and T3. And so let's recap. Your brain makes TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. That can be affected by insulin levels in your body. So high insulin levels can make your brain put out less TSH. Now there's less of that. T4 is converted in your thyroid when it's stimulated by the thyroid stimulating hormone. So the body sends a message from the brain to the thyroid. That message is TSH. The thyroid starts producing T4, which is an inactive form of thyroid. And then as the body has energy needs, that T4 gets converted into T3, and the T3 helps dictate how our energy is used. So we have these two pieces in this part. There's always two sides. I'll always talk about two sides. We have insulin delivering the energy, and we have thyroid telling the energy how much is need, or the cells how much energy they need, or and how to use that energy. But now when insulin has already disrupted those factors along the way, you may not have enough T3 getting into the cells or being converted from your T4. So it becomes a really intricate interplay. And I'm not going to go over all of that again right now, but so there's a definite link between thyroid or hypothyroid and insulin resistance. But what was interesting to me, and you guys, thank you for asking these questions, because, like I know some stuff and then you guys ask me questions and I go do some research and I get to learn too. And that makes me happy. I was just telling my daughter-in-law last night, I'm like, who would have thought that I would be doing a job where I get to learn, because I had wanted to be a doctor. Life took a different path, but I'd wanted to be a doctor. And so now I get to learn a lot of the stuff that I was hoping to learn, and I get to share it with you guys, and I get to actually impact people without being in a doctor's office all day. All right. So The interesting thing I learned after I went on that tirade was that more than 80% of hypothyroidism is Hashimoto's. That it just is the driver for hypothyroidism. So there's that little piece of the insulin causing some of the thyroid dysfunction, and that definitely they interplay together, right? Insulin interplays with so many things, and thyroid is one of them. So when we're talking about how the energy is used in the body, these two hormones play a big role because, again, insulin delivering the energy, thyroid kind of dictating how the energy gets used. If either one is off, it makes the other act worse. So there's actually 5 stages. Um, I'm not a doctor. I was actually gonna I wanted to do something with endocrine, just because I suffered with it my whole life. So this is right down my alley of what my hopes and dreams were, right? Okay, so Hashimoto's. I just saw that. What type of doctor? And thank you for that. Melba, I'm so sorry. Yesterday, I thought I pushed the live button on Facebook, YouTube, and when I got done, I realized I hadn't. So I apologize, honey. All right, let me get back on track. So Hashimoto's, 80% of it is actually where the hypothyroidism it is caused from. Now, like in some areas, there may be an iodine deficiency, that kind of thing triggers it. But for most of us in the world, our hypothyroidism is actually Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's itself, and I am going to refer to my notes because I'm learning and I cannot just retain and recite all night. But there's 5 stages of Hashimoto's. And the first one, kind of ground zero, is just having that genetic disposition. Now, just because you have the genetic disposition doesn't mean that Hashimoto's is going to develop. And I've talked about that with a number of other things, that you have a genetic, and like PCOS is one. You have that genetic disposition, but you kind of have to have that light switch to turn it on, right? Well, for Hashimoto's, a big light switch that starts to turn it on, that gene is insulin resistance. So the more insulin resistant you become, the more likely you're becoming to having that Hashimoto's gene turned on, and now you start having problems. But there's another interesting thing with that. I'm going to go, well, we'll go over the 5 stages. I'm trying to think. What do I want to say? I'm going to say this before we finish going over the 5 stages. Some other interesting things, which I already knew, that there's a lot of correlation between symptoms between Hashimoto's and insulin resistance. And for a long time, because people weren't saying insulin resistance, doctors may have been calling it these symptoms, and any abnormality in the thyroid, they may have been calling it Hashimoto's because they didn't know what else to call it. What they're now understanding is they understand insulin resistance more. Some endocrine doctors are saying, hey, look, if you present with all these symptoms, things like fatigue and low energy, difficulty in losing weight, weight gain that you just can't that you can't get rid of, you have cravings for starchy or sugary foods, mood fluctuations, gastrointestinal issues. So those are symptoms of Hashimoto's. So if you look at those symptoms, all of those symptoms are very, very common in insulin resistance. The bottom line is some thyroid doctors are saying, if you're having problems and your doctor's not saying you have thyroid, but yet you present with all these symptoms, maybe start addressing your insulin resistance. So even some of these endocrine doctors are talking about how, well, there's a certain percentage, and I can't remember what percentage he said, of patients that come in thinking they're Hashimoto's are actually just insulin resistant. And now that he knows, he's making that differentiation so he can make sure that people are getting the right treatment because the symptoms are so similar. Are you understanding now how when we go through all of these symptoms, especially with the endocrine system, that all of the symptoms are very similar and they all are linking back to insulin resistance? So let's get back to the 5 stages. Now I got that thought out of my head, we can go back to the 5 stages. So that kind of ground zero is just having the genetic predisposition. But then, you start to have this immune cell infiltration, and it's, when your immune system starts attacking the thyroid gland. Well, there's a couple of things. Let's back up the truck a little. When insulin resistance gets in play, remember when the thyroid or the brain is producing thyroid stimulating hormone. So, and the thyroid stimulating hormone only has to be as high as it has to be to get the T4 to produce. So that's stimulating the thyroid to produce T4, and then the T4 is getting contributed or converted into T3 when we need the T3 for the cellular energy uptake and usage, right? But if insulin resistance is impeding the conversion of T4 to T3, what can happen is the body goes, oh, well, we need to produce more T4 so we can convert that T3. Now the thyroid is overstimulating, and the body sees it as a problem when it was overstimulation of insulin resistance that started the thyroid overworking. Now the body's attacking the thyroid. And that's a very simplistic view of it, but that's basically what's happening. So as we start to become more insulin resistant, we're getting this dysfunction in the thyroid, and then it starts acting out, and the body sees it as an issue and starts to attack it. At that stage, that could be going on in abundance for decades before you really realize that there's a thyroid problem. And then it goes to stage 3, subclinical hypothyroidism. And at this point, um, the antibodies are actually damaging your thyroid, and it becomes underactive. Now that thyroid that was trying to put out so much to overcompensate for the fact that T4 isn't converting is now producing even less T4 because it's just underactive. So there's less of the thyroid that you need to convert for energy when you need it, and the thyroid's just kind of tired of being attacked and overworked. Um, so at this point, a person is likely very insulin resistant at the same time. So by the time you get to stage 3, what we want to understand is as you progress through these stages, it gets harder and harder and harder to reverse it. So if we can catch it, ground zero, when we just know there's a genetic disposition and really pay attention to insulin resistance, that Hashimoto's gene may never get turned on or kicked off. Stage 1, it's starting to be mildly hypothyroid, or uh, if you and that can be driven by the high blood sugar. So if you can dampen this down at every stage, you have a better chance of helping your thyroid. Now, you also want to understand that with thyroid medication, um, whether you choose to do the Synthroid, which is what I did for years, or whether you do Armor, which was what I transitioned into, or if you do bioidentical, make sure that you're not overusing or underusing your thyroid. If you're overusing thyroid medication, that can cause your thyroid starts shutting down too. So if you're overusing it, thinking, oh, hey, a little bit of thyroid is really helping me lose weight, I'm going to take a little bit more because I want to get this weight off. What you're actually doing is telling your thyroid to stop working as well. So I think that if you need thyroid medication, you need to take thyroid medication. You don't hear me talk about being an advocate for many medications, but thyroid is one that, like, I just really feel like if you're supposed to take it and take the amount you're supposed to take. Okay. But now to support you having a healthy thyroid, we want to understand this interplay of insulin resistance and how much it's starting to affect your thyroid in affecting how much TSH can be produced from the brain. And then, because of the blood sugar levels, how much it interferes with that hormone conversion from the T4 to the T3. So, on both ends, insulin resistance can be affecting how your thyroid hormones and how your thyroid looks and acts. Now, stage 4, Hashimoto's, it's it's you're at this point now where um this is where most people are by the time they're diagnosed with Hashimoto's. Sorry, I'm having a hard time spitting that out. But so if you can catch this in stage one, two, three, and deal with it, you may never get to that point where you're actually clinically diagnosed with Hashimoto's. You can start to manage it and get all of that under control. You may or may not need those thyroid hormones, but understand that also Hashimoto's is more than 80% of hypothyroidism. Um, so I think what is it at stage 3 or at stage 4 where you've always kind of been hypothyroidism and now you start to become hyperthyroidism and you go there's this I think it's at stage 3 where you go between hyper having too much thyroid activity to hypo having not enough thyroid activity. And so it's that wild swing between the two. That's kind of that mid stage that's saying, hey, you're progressing, and if you don't take care of it now, so if you start having those thyroid labs where you're reactive one time and underreactive another time, know that this is like turn back now signal. Start getting it under control now before it starts to really permanently affect your thyroid and your endocrine system with the energy levels that you can convert in your body. Okay. So again, insulin transports, thyroid converts, okay, or uses the energy. So now when you get to stage 5, what they call end stage, in the final stage, the thyroid has become so damaged that it can no longer produce adequate thyroid hormones, and you're now needing thyroid medication all the time, you just will not function, and it can be deadly to not have that thyroid medication. But at every stage along the way up until like stage 5, you could reverse it by taking the right amount of thyroid and by addressing your insulin. Now at stage 5, you're just kind of bound. You need to also address your insulin still, because remember, that's continually making your thyroid worse. Now you got to really be careful with your thyroid. So make sure that you're taking care of your thyroid and understanding it early. But a couple of things with Hashimoto's and insulin resistance. Some of the ways that it's causing it are is through inflammation. So I've heard more and more doctors talk about autoimmune disease is just inflammation. So if we could start to understand that most people are walking around today with extremely inflamed cellular makeup, we could start to understand that by helping decrease that inflammation, we can help decrease the diseases. So a couple of days ago, I had, and I'm pretty sure they were vegan and alkaline, proponent on this chat, causing a little disruption. But what they're getting at with that alkaline whole problem is this inflammation. They're trying to attack the inflammation, but they're trying to attack it by adding in more of what they're seeing as deficient instead of looking at the overabundance of what's causing us to be overly acidic and inflamed. So it's kind of like that still, to me, it's like that pouring clean water into a dirty fish tank and hoping your fish tank is clean. No, you got to clean the fish tank out, and then you got to put the clean water in for the fish tank to be clean. So in our system with inflammation, it's not trying to, it's like pushing a boulder uphill or rolling it downhill. If you are continually dumping stuff in that's inflammatory, and what they're saying is by being alkaline, you're reducing that. But if you're not looking at all of these other things like insulin resistance, you're just not understanding the inflammation, and you're pushing instead of encouraging, and that's never a good look inside the body. So if we just know that insulin resistance causes this inflammation and this acidity in the body, that all of those things are causing a number of autoimmune diseases, including some thyroid problems. And if we understand that getting that inflammation down, um, we might be able to have more control over these autoimmune diseases. Now, Remember that this is another bidirectional thing, inflammation and insulin resistance. When we start to become insulin resistant, when we start to have too much sugar in the system, we start to get inflamed cells. And so then that inflammation then further exacerbates the insulin resistance. Insulin resistance can cause the inflammation, but inflammation can cause insulin resistance. And that type of inflammation could be things like just from being stressed and not sleeping well. But more likely, it could be from trauma, broken bones, severe wounds, injuries that take you to the hospital, or times in the hospital where you're in surgery or in procedures. All of those little onslaughts on the body cause inflammation. It wouldn't be such a bad thing, but now our diet is so bad that we have this little bit of rise of inflammation, which is causing a little bit of insulin resistance, and then we're putting all the wrong foods in, causing even more inflammation and insulin resistance, and all that inflammation can lead into these autoimmune diseases. So, sorry, I missed some. How do you know if you have Hashimoto's? You have to go to an endocrine specialist to have that looked at. And they're going to look at some, not just your TSH, your TSH, your T4, and your T3. They should be looking at an antiperoxidase antibody. So they need to look at that. That antibody will tell them if you have the autoimmune part where that antibody is attacking your thyroid. So they'll want to do those 4 tests at the minimum. And if you have Hashimoto's, make sure that along with addressing your insulin resistance, you're getting in a proper dosage. My recommendation is to do either like the Armor or the bioidentical. My understanding is that it's much gentler on the body. In my body, it was much gentler. So nobody understood that that's what was going on when I hit like that stage 3 where I was going hyper to hypo, and my endocrine specialist was like pulling his hair out because my thyroid antibodies were all over the place. Sometimes they were perfect and sometimes they were completely out of whack. And he was super frustrated. And he was an endocrine specialist. It was a naturopathic doctor who was testing me for from with a German technology, and he said, "Look," he goes, "You definitely need the Synthroid." He couldn't pinpoint where it came from. I didn't have any apparent nutritional deficiencies as far as micronutrients because he could test for that. But I still had this wildly swinging thyroid that no matter where he tried to look within my system, he could figure out why this was happening. Well, maybe it wasn't so much just directed from my thyroid, maybe it was directed from my diet, right? So he put me on Armor. I did better on Armor than on Synthroid. He also said that at times when he tested me, I would have had to been on 5 times the dose of Synthroid for it to actually affect my thyroid in the way that we needed it to for me to be healthy and lose weight. But at that point, it would start shutting down my kidneys. So he was like, "But if you got the dose of Synthroid that you need, your kidneys are going to shut down." So the thyroid is really, I mean, as with many systems, it's really intricate and it's really delicate. But the one thing I want everybody to understand and know is that if you can address how your blood sugars are acting in your body, how you're affecting your blood sugars by what you eat, if you can address that, you can address a majority of the causes, the results, and how much better you feel of any of these diseases. Another interesting thing, I'm going to start talking about the protocol. I'm going to start talking about how to overcome insulin resistance. And I think that's important. Like, you now know how interactive that thyroid and insulin resistance are. And that I didn't find, now I can't spew out data on that, but a majority of the cause of this switch being flipped and I don't have a number, it is this insulin resistance piece. When we have this blood sugar dysregulation starting to mess with thyroid hormones, starting to mess with inflammation in the body, now we're setting up the storm for it to become Hashimoto's. So address the food that we're eating, and then we can address these diseases. So insulin resistance, for those who have not been with me before, is just when your body is getting in so much energy and it's converting it into something called glucose, which is just the energy that's usable to your body. When that glucose gets to be too much in your bloodstream, your body, or when it starts to go up, let's not say too much because I don't want people to have that picture of it. But when your blood sugar starts to rise, because you only can have about 1 teaspoon of glucose or sugar in your bloodstream at any given point in time, or destruction starts happening. Now, at this point, when the body senses this rise in energy, it's going to cue the pancreas, which produces hormones that help regulate our metabolism. One is glucagon, the other is insulin. It does more than these two, but we're going to talk about these two. So now insulin comes up in response to sugar being in the system. Insulin is delivering that energy to the cells and knocking on the cell door saying, hey, I have a package for you. I have something great for you. Do you want it? And most of the cells are going to be like, yeah, I want that. I need that. I need the energy. But at some point, the cells are like, hey, I just took a delivery from you and I really don't have room for more. So now insulin is floating around the system going, what am I going to do? And it starts packing it in your storage unit called your fat cells. Now your fat cells are growing, and the bigger your fat cells become, the more inflammatory markers are made in your system, and the more insulin resistant you become, and the more sensitive you are to those sugars in your body. Okay. Insulin resistance, big bag battle. What it really comes down to is glucose dysregulation. So if we can understand that regulating the sugars that come into our body, not necessarily having to get rid of them, but just regulating how they are in the body, is really important to getting all of this under control. So how do we do that? Well, we got to stop eating so much sugar so much of the time. So I do a few things. We're going to go over 6 simple tips. I'm going to try and rattle them off without getting sidetracked, and then I'll go into them. So these are the 6 simple principles I talk about, and we're going to explain why in just a second. But fiber first. Before you eat, every time you eat, prioritize protein. When you do eat, the first thing you should eat on your plate is protein. Then you don't want to fear fats, and you want to fuel with fat. Fat is another fuel source for our body. Dietary fat is not causing the fat on our body. Dietary fat is a fuel cueing our body to burn more fat. Fiber, see, I get distracted. Fiber, protein, fats, limit your carbs, especially boxed starchy carbs, right? Try to focus on the carbs that are the dark leafy above ground things, and some fruits and berries that, like, I love blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. Those are all great, blueberries specifically. And then you want to do some intermittent fasting, and then you want to move your body. Those are the 6 simple principles I talk about. Now, let's talk about the intermittent fasting part. Why do we do time restricted eating? It is not about calorie counting. It's not about calorie restriction. It's not about taking in less food. It's not about any of that. It's about allowing your metabolism to actually function and work on both sides of it. So we have a sugar burning side of our metabolism. We have a fat burning side of our metabolism. So when we're eating, and we're eating foods that have carbohydrates, which includes fruits and vegetables, we're telling our body it's burning sugar for fuel. So insulin levels are up because it's carrying that sugar around. The thing is, glucagon, which is telling our body to burn fat for fuel, can't come out while insulin is high. So we have to get insulin down. This is why we stop eating, and this is why. When you eat, it takes about 2 hours for those blood sugars to really peak and normalize. They're spiking, right? But that's got to go throughout the body, and now at about 4 hours, those blood sugars have hopefully been delivered by your insulin, and they're starting to come down. And if you're insulin resistant, it can take a few more hours for you to to get that insulin level to say, okay, I can calm down and go away because they're not going to eat more. That's at about 8 hours. At about 10 hours after you've eaten, your glucagon, if you're mildly insulin resistant, your glucagon can come out. Now, why does that matter? If insulin is down, glucagon can come out. Glucagon is going to start telling your body, hey, there's no more sugar coming in. There's no more of that kind of energy. We need to start breaking down some of these fat stores. We need to start utilizing that fat, that's stored energy. We need to get that broken down and used as energy. So part of what happens when glucagon comes out is we start having ketones, which are, and an increase in ketones just furthers this whole process. Those ketones are actually the beginning of fat breaking down, and they're just these little packages of broken down fat that are running through the body. So instead of insulin, now you've got ketones running through your body and glucagon. When this is happening, now your body's like, oh, okay, and it starts burning more fat. So those little ketones are the messengers telling the body, okay, we're breaking down fat now, we're on this train, we're going to go this way, and we're going to burn fat for fuel. When you eat fat, that's actually helping. When you eat saturated or monounsaturated fats, things like butter, ghee, um, lard, duck fat, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. Those fats all are helping cue your body to burn more fat. They're not storing fat. Now, just like anything, if you overdo it, then the body's going to be like, okay, this is ridiculous. And at some point you start to block that fat burning. But if you're having good fat in your system, not this seed oils, and this is a whole other talk. I was talking to my kids last night about linoleic acid and the stuff that's in seed oils and how devastating it is. Stick with the good fats. They're going to help you be more insulin sensitive. They're going to help with this whole metabolism disaster that we're in. So understanding that we need to switch, right? So intermittent fasting is a key to this, and we promote a 16-8 fast. I can't help myself. I gotta say it. So I was doing as I'm always doing. I'm always listening to information. They're now saying an 18, not my company, but just other people are saying an 18-6 fast might do even better. And I've long thought that myself, because look, if we get to 10 hours where we have glucagon out, and then 2 hours after that, about 12 hours, HGH is going up, ketones are going up. At around hour 14, we're in a really good fat burning state, and we wait till hour 16, and we're in fat burning and starting to turn on some autophagy. If we just had the same 2 meals in a day, but just pushed the eating window down a little and the fasting window up a little to 18, and still had 2 really nutritious meals in that 6-hour window, they're seeing that there may be better results with that. But how are you going to get to an 18-hour fast when you can barely make it through the night without eating? I'm going to talk about how we do that. Is sesame oil good? No. So any of those oils, if they're not the ones I talked about, I would avoid them. I don't even have them in my house. There's a number of reasons why. There's linoleic acids in those seed oils. That linoleic acid causes an inflammation response in the body, which increases insulin resistance. So yes, those seed oils are actually exacerbating insulin resistance, and I'm having allergies, excuse me. Now, the interesting thing I found yesterday that I just can't hold back, in all this talk about linoleic acids, and we can get into that in another talk, maybe next week about fats. But whereas like when you eat sugar, unless you store it, the sugar burns through pretty quickly, right? When you eat saturated fats, they're actually bumping up your metabolism, causing these ketones to be spiked, but you're still burning through that energy, within a short amount of time. So it's not just staying there. You're utilizing the nutrients, it's moving on. Linoleic acid can stay in your system for over 600 days. So, nearly 2 years after you eat it, that linoleic acid that's causing inflammation in your body is still in your cellular structure, causing inflammation. So, when some people are like, well, like for me, it's taken 3 years. I haven't gotten away from the seed oils completely because I still eat out. And we were talking about it last night. I'm probably going to do a lot less of that just because the seed oils, now that I understand how long they stay in your body, causing inflammation. And like every time you go to one of those places because you're in a hurry and you put more of that in, now you reset the clock to another 600 days before that inflammation goes out of your cells. Now, what I'm learning for myself, part of my issue is my cells have been extremely inflamed for a long time. Well, when we look at those seed oils like sesame oil that are highly laden with linoleic acid, now I understand that I just kicked off inflammation for another 2 years for 5 minutes of convenience. Crazy? And then if we understand that a lot of these seed oils they're processed at such a high heat that they become rancid and then they stink really bad and they have a really, really horrible color. They look more like motor oil most of the time than they do the oil you see on the shelf. So how does it become this clear golden oil that you're using for your cooking? Well, they bleach it. They bleach that oil and then they add some fragrance to it so that when you open up the bottle, you're not running for the hills and dumping it out because it smells so bad. So if you understood what's in those seed oils and how they process them, and more metabolic scientists are talking about this, and more doctors who are dealing with thyroid and PCOS and whatnot are talking about things like oils, we need to understand that. Been a little bit of a detour, but yeah, no, don't. If it's a seed oil, just avoid it. Just avoid it. Just stick with those oils. By the way, I do have a ebook that you can download that has all those 6 simple steps in it, so you can read about them, remember what they were, put them in action in your own life. And I don't charge for it. It's just my gift to you guys, so you can help start to get on your path to health. So if you lost enough weight, here's the thing, and that's a great, great question. And Melba, I don't know what's wrong with the doctor. Hold on, I've got to read her comments. That's okay. Your doctor last week tried to tell you that the GLP-1s are not taking insulin. That comment's confusing me. That you're trying to tell your doctor the GLP-1s are not taking insulin, and she is type 1 diabetic. Well, the GLP-1s are really not a form of insulin, and insulin therapy and the GLP-1s are two very different therapies for sure. Um, we can have a talk about GLP-1s. I think I'm going to talk about GLPs a little bit tomorrow because I want you to understand those medications, Melba, that you're talking about, and then also understand that this tea that I drink every morning, whether I'm drinking it hot or cold, and I need it hot today, that is eliciting natural GLP action in your body. And that particular tea is increasing it by 70%. So the benefits of those drugs without all the damaging side effects is what the tea does. And that's why it's been so amazing. I don't know what's going on with doctors. Um, so back to if you lost enough weight, do you still need to fast? You guys, this is a lifestyle. It's a life-preserving lifestyle. If you were eating too much all day long, every day, and you're eating every 2 hours and you're continually spiking your insulin, and you do some fasting to reverse it, let's talk about this way. And I'm not trying to be abrasive, but I just want people to think. So if you wash your car and then you go take it off-roading, do you have to wash your car again? So every day we eat or go back to the way we were eating before, highly processed foods, eating all the time. It's like taking your car off-roading. Now you're going to go wash it again. So it's a continual process of maintenance. Do you need to fast as aggressively once you've lost weight? I would be more concerned with what caused the weight gain in the first place. And are the other underlying symptoms of the syndrome called insulin resistance taken care of and mediated enough that the weight came down, but is all the inflammation gone? Is all the other stuff gone? As you become more insulin sensitive, no, you don't have to do as long a fast, but just be careful that if you start going back to what you were doing, you're going to end up back where you were. Now, I think that we all need to take a break from eating for at least 12 hours. Okay. If you have a day or two where you're out partying and you're having partying being like doing stuff with the family and all of that, and then you go back to a normal life, that 1 or 2 days isn't going to like derail your whole train. Continuing of those 1 or 2 days of eating all the time and not giving your body a 12-hour rest, because remember, your hormones have to have time to interact, and if you're not giving them time, then we start to get imbalanced again. So as you get more insulin sensitive, like I still have work to do with my system from all the damage that happened. So I regularly do 36-hour fasts, and I'm thinking of doing a 48 or 72-hour fast here again soon. But I do those to help my body heal, not to regulate my weight, to help my body heal. Even when you have your weight managed, you need your body to understand when to burn sugar and when to burn fat, and you need it to be able to do that. It's not like you go into the gym and skip leg day all the time and then expect to go squat 400 pounds or do some activity that's highly driven by legs. So you've got to balance, right? You've got to keep both of them working. And you're going to get glucose derived from protein. We talked about that yesterday. So it doesn't mean you need to overload with sugar, but we need to be able to flex. Your body's naturally going to switch to insulin as you eat, unless you are just eating fats. They don't really spike your insulin. Well, you're not going to survive long on that. So even if you're eating protein, part of that converts into glucose, and then your body's getting that sugar energy. But it also needs to know when to use the fat energy. And right now, we haven't been telling our bodies that it can burn fat for fuel. So the tea that I drink is called Unamate. You can find it right in my profile. You guys, when we talk about the protocol, I'm an authorized distributor. The company, they're regularly landing on my page and checking what I say and all of that stuff to make sure that I'm in compliance. When you go to things like Amazon, eBay, Walmart, none of those people are authorized. Some of them are selling expired products. Some of them are selling, just partial packages, and then you get it and you're in it. Every single person that I've contacted that said, hey, I've been doing it, you haven't contacted me, and we found out it's because they bought off of Amazon. They paid about $100 more than they needed to for the system. So don't do that to yourself. Just use the link. Now, the tea and the pre-meal drink. The tea that I'm drinking right now, it's a highly concentrated form of yerba mate tea. Dr. Ben Bickman was just talking on a podcast, not related to this company, just on a general podcast, where he was talking about GLP-1s and some of the best natural ways to increase them. He stated on that podcast, this tea is the best way naturally to increase that, and it can increase your GLP-1 by 70%. And he named the tea and the company. So I drink one of these teas a day, and in truth, I usually have 2 of them a day, because it's great for my mental stability, my mental clarity, for my mental energy, for my physical energy, for my fat burning. When I'm doing this, I'm in a fasted state right now. Drinking this tea actually helps kick up those ketones so that I'm more into a fat burning state. And the energy you feel when you start to train your body to be able to use fat for fuel, that kind of energy that you eventually start to feel, and for me, it was right away, is crazy. It's like, what is this? It's not this jittery, weird energy. I just have a lot of energy and a lot of mental clarity. Your doc said melasma is not a symptom of problems. with your kidneys. Okay, palm oil, no. Okay. So I don't understand the question. I am not a kidney specialist, and I'm not a specialist with any of these things. I just link up how insulin resistance is affecting all of them so you guys can understand a better way to address all of the problems. So, if you can clarify, let me tell you this, Becca. What I can tell you is my melasma got like I still have some. I probably have what you would call age spots now. Those are typical. But the melasma that had like big black patches on the side of my face, that's gone. But so that's related to insulin resistance. Kidney disorders are highly related to insulin resistance because insulin resistance changes the way the kidneys can filter um, anything, and it's just causing distress with the kidneys. We've had a number of people with stage 3 kidney disease reverse that by addressing their insulin resistance with this problem. So if you go to your doctor and say, do my kidneys cause my melasma? They're likely going to say no. But if you go, what's causing my melasma and what's causing my kidney failure, and take another step back and say insulin resistance, now we have an answer. Okay. Simple, simple, simple answer. So this tea, you know, berberine is good. And I think there's some efficacy to it. For me, I don't do berberine because I do the system. And why do I do the system instead of just doing something like berberine? Because of the tea in the morning that I drink, like I told you, and it shuts down my hunger, you guys. So I don't feel hungry when I'm drinking the tea. I have better energy. I'm burning fat for fuel. Great stuff, right? And it's a tea. It costs me, the whole system costs me about $5 a day, less than $2 a serving for the tea, which is less than soda pop and a lot of the other drinks you get. It's also, when people think it's expensive, when I looked at like a canned yerba mate tea or some other yerba mate teas, they were between $2 and $3 a serving. Not any more expensive than others, but this has 375 times the chlorogenic acids, a component that actually is helping your body be more insulin sensitive than the regular yerba mate teas because it's been formulated to be that way. I would, if you had to choose, and you can do it, I mean, if you're a beginning faster, start with 16. But if you can go to 18 hours and do 2 meals and do 2 clean meals, high protein, high fats, limit the carbs, you're getting a little bit more benefit of that fat burning and beginnings of autophagy when you go to 18 hours. That's what I would say. Is it necessary? No. But if you want to bump up your results, do you want to maybe push it to 18? Yes. Now, here's the thing. Then people start going, well, if 18 hours is good, 24 is better. Well, some more information. It's hard to get the amount of nutrients that we need to eat in 1 meal a day. So that's why that's why I'm still a proponent of 2 meals a day, because you need to get those proteins in. You need to get the macronutrients, but you also need to get micronutrients in. And it's really difficult, in honesty, to do it in OMAD. But people think if it's they're still stuck in that it's a calorie deficit thing, and it's not. Another interesting piece of information that I absolutely love. I was listening to somebody else who's not even linked to the program that I do, but he was talking about calorie depletion or calorie dilution. And now he's a scientist, and he said what they did was they're starting to understand, and he says we got it wrong. Calorie depletion, calorie restriction is never been the way. They got that completely wrong. It's actually that calorie deficit is a really great way to screw up your metabolism even more. Calorie dilution is what helped people start to lose weight and feel better along with their intermittent fasting. Calorie dilution doesn't mean you're reducing 2,000 calories back to 1,200 calories or 1,500 calories. Calorie dilution means that you're adding fiber. So the fiber can slow down how quickly that energy is hitting your system. What have I been telling you guys for 3 years? This is why the system works. The second part of the system is this fiber matrix. It's 7 different types of soluble and insoluble fiber that are specifically designed for calorie dilution. Okay, so it's slowing down the calories, how they hit your system, how your glucose is running through your system and getting into your intestinal tract and needing to be passed out to the body. Now, when we have this calorie dilution, when we have this slowed down of those calories hitting the intestinal tract, now insulin can start to come down and you start to become more insulin sensitive. That's what this does. So, I will likely always do at least 2 of these a day because I understand that portion of it. Because I also understand this is prebiotics, which are feeding the probiotics, the good bacteria in my gut, and helping them become stronger. So not only do I have the calorie dilution going on, I have a healthier gut and more probiotics instead of the negative microbiota like yeast going on in my system. So it's simple. It's a tea I do in the morning and a pre-meal drink that I have before I eat anything. And that's how I managed my insulin resistance, reversed my diabetes, reversed my blood pressure, got my PCOS and my Hashimoto's and all that under control. It's simple. You guys understand it. You are not deficient in a medication. You are not deficient in a medication. You be getting overweight, you having Hashimoto's, you having PCOS, you having eyesight that's failing, that's not a medication deficiency. So why is it you walk into a doctor's office and instead of saying, hey, something is going on nutritionally, your sugars are delivering to your system too quickly and you're not getting in enough fat and protein. So let's go fix those things and then we'll look at medications. If we can't fix it by adjusting your nutrition, why do we do that? Well, it has to do with profit, right? So, of course, the sicker you stay and the more medications you have to stay on, the more that, that's the whole thing that I absolutely believe happens. But if you knew that just by addressing this, adding some fiber in, this specific fiber that I drink, 10 minutes before I eat, helps me feel full, slows down the calorie absorption, doesn't deprive you of any nutrient absorption. And actually, when you have that nutrient absorption slowed down, you actually get better absorption of your nutrients than when it's going through your system so quickly. Your system's like, hi, goodbye. Wait, where did all those nutrients go? Because they just passed right through. Okay. So that's what the system does, and that's why it works. And you guys, I have seen so many people, including my own family members, start to get better from this just by doing these drinks. My beautiful little 7-year-old grandson with a liposomal disorder is now drinking the fiber, and his gut issues have been getting better and he's dealing with foods better. And it's freaking amazing to me that after 3 years, they finally are letting him do it. So I have 2 other grandchildren who do the entire system, a granddaughter who constantly drinks her mama's tea. My 2 daughters do it. I have other family members. And why? Because I saw how much, and they saw how much this changed my life. They were with me when they watched me go from world champion powerlifter to mama has a cane and a walker and can hardly walk, and she's in pain all the time. And every time I come to her house, she's on the couch because she can hardly move. They watched that progression into illness for me. They watched me try keto and veganism and doing the medical medium and making crazy shakes and having all kinds of insane stuff throughout my house to try and get my health under control while still being on 13 medications. They watched that whole thing. And at first they were skeptical, right? Of course they were. But 3 years in, and they see mom able to walk up and down stairs without handrails and carrying bags of groceries, which was completely impossible 3 years ago. They've watched the weight, but they've watched the energy, they've watched the mental state, they've watched the depression go, they've watched all of this stuff. And they're like, mom can't shut up about this, and it's done so much for her. Maybe we should give it a try. And I think you guys should too. Because look, it has a 90-day money back guarantee. You do it for 90 days though. I'm I'm thinking about something. I'll save it till I can figure out if I want to really actually say that or not. But just do it for 90 days. Do it for 90 days and see what can happen for you. Um, it can change your whole life. There's something I want to say, and I'm just like, I've got to hold on to something for once and think about it before I say it. But anyway, there's that. You guys, I am done for the morning. Tomorrow we're going to talk about a little bit about GLP-1, what that means, why, insulin therapy for type 2 diabetics is bad, and how we can get there more naturally, getting the GLP-1 increased, and this tea. We're going to be talking a lot about the tea that's helping that happen while supporting and nourishing your body. Um, oh, there's one thing. That's one thing I can say. I will say, in all this work that I've been, and you know what? I'm going to say it again. I appreciate each of you guys and the questions you bring, because every time I have to go do research, because I don't know all this stuff off the top of my head, but every time I have to go do research and listen to multiple doctors and find stuff, I learned something. And my conversation with my daughter-in-law yesterday was, man, like this is just amazing to me. I have a brain that loves to learn the sciencey stuff. Like if you guys saw my bookshelves, there is not one fiction story on my shelves. It's all self-help and sciencey stuff. That's my brain. You guys ask me questions. I get to study. I get to learn. I appreciate that. Now, in all of this with protein, I'm still flabbergasted by the guy who said protein was so toxic when every single cell of our body needs protein. That's insane. What I want to get to, if I can spit it out, is we used to think that you could only absorb or use about 40 to 50 grams of protein in a sitting. That's why I do the 40 to 50 grams during 3 different meals, and I just don't snack in between, but I keep them protein and fat heavy and then try to keep my carbohydrates in one meal. Science is now showing that up until you get to an excess of what your body needs, your body's going to um, it's not going to be able to process all of the protein at once, but it will start to process it over time. So immediately, maybe it was only using 40 to 50 grams, but eventually it will be able to utilize all. If you eat 100 grams in a sitting, it'll be able to utilize that. And I didn't know that, and science is just starting to show that. So having a high protein meal, it's not like the rest of the protein is just getting wasted. Now, when you get to the tipping point, like anything, there's a tipping point. When you get to the tipping point where it's just too much protein for your body, but most of us are not there. However, for those people who are like, but when it gets to that point, what's going to happen is when you're having excess protein of what you need, it's going to either start to try and excrete it, which is putting a load on your kidneys, or it's going to store it as fat. So now you're gaining fat and you're not as lean anymore. That's a cue that you've taken in too much protein. But most of us will never, ever, ever in our daily lives take in too much protein. So the protein grams, Melba, are you in the US or are you in the UK? So here's the calculation. It's super simple. You guys got a pen and paper? What you want to do is understand where your body would be the healthiest at a lean weight. Now, older women, we do not need to have a BMI that says we only have 18% body fat. 24% body fat is probably pretty healthy for older women. So figure out what your weight should be. For me, I know that because of my bone structure, because of the muscle tissue that I carry from the years of lifting, my lean mass, if I was to have some decent fat on me and still look lean while maintaining muscle, I would probably need to be about 170 pounds, which is big for a woman, but that's my build. So that means I need to use that calculation, but we'll just use 150 pounds is what you want to be as your ideal weight. So that 150 pounds, you're just going to have that many grams of protein in a day. So 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. Now, I'm a little upwards of 200. Does that mean I need to have 200 grams of protein now? No, it doesn't. It means I need to feed my muscle with that 150 to 170 grams of protein. That's why I try to get in 50 grams per serving if I'm having a 3 meal day. And I try to get in a little more if not. Now, understanding that I can have more than 50 grams of protein and still utilize it, damn straight. I'm going to up the protein in my meals and just ride this train. So, in the UK or in other countries where you're using kilograms, it's like this: it's zero point 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So, you can do that calculation and figure out how many grams of protein that you need to get in a day. That's going to help you stay satiated. That's going to help you stay functioning well. It's going to feed all the cells of your body. It's going to do all the stuff we talked about yesterday. So protein is super important. Need to be 125. So you need to get in about 125 to 130 grams of protein in a day. If you're doing a 2 meal day, then you need to make sure you're getting in at least 60 grams, right? 60 to 65 grams in a. So a chicken breast is, you guys, when I did my cookbook, there's a couple of websites that seem to be pretty accurate. You can type in how much protein in, or what is the nutrition in a chicken breast. So a chicken breast is going to vary wildly. A medium-sized chicken breast is probably about 30 grams of protein. A large chicken breast can be up to about 50 grams of protein. So the size of chicken breast is going to, is going to tell. So don't go, oh, 50 grams of protein. That's a big chicken breast. And then eat a medium chicken breast and think I got 50 grams. You can put it in. And then there are fitness apps, and these are not, I'm not saying you have to do this because you're some fitness weirdo, but to start understanding what your macros look like and how this food needs to go in, you might want to put it in an app like Fit Day or Fitness Pal or whatever. You can put that in. It will actually tell you the macros, and most of them will actually give you some of the micros from that food. So when I was powerlifting, and I have a lot going on, so I don't want to overwhelm myself. I have ADHD and I tend to overwhelm myself pretty easily. But I've been considering starting to put some of my food into a fit tracker again too, just to check up and see, am I really getting all the macronutrients in that I need? I think I know, because I did it for so long. But just, I used to plug in my food like whatever. So today, whatever I think I want to eat tomorrow, I would go, okay, I'm going to do this, this, this. I would plug it all in and make sure that it hit my macros, that I got enough protein in, that I was getting enough fat in, that I had regulated my sugars. I was doing this even before I started the protocol. And then it would tell me. And then if I'm like, oh, well, that thing set me over, what I really should be doing for carbohydrates, or I'm not getting in enough protein, I need to add something, then I could adjust that. Then I knew the next day what I was going to have to eat, and life was much simpler. So you try that. You don't have to do that, but try that. Another good way is this. Your serving of protein, if you're doing 3 meals a day, 3 meals, your serving of protein should be about the size of your fist. So that's going to vary. My fist is pretty damn big compared to most women's fists. It's more the size of a man's fist. But that's the size of protein that I would want to have on my plate. Simple. I'm talking simplifying this for you, right? I'm not talking scientific, specific, perfect, but I'm giving you a way to say, this is what I can visualize and use to get protein in. Protein about the size of your fist. When you're looking at, if you're somebody who's trying to really balance with vegetables, and I'm talking not the root vegetables, but again, those dark and leafy green vegetables, you also want to do about the size of your fist. So asparagus, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, those things, if you want to get that in a healthy amount, that would be about the same. So size of fist of protein, size of fist of vegetables. Now, fat is a little more different, right? The fat grams are going to convert out differently. I've tried to plug it in, and I'm still a little confounded with it, so I don't have a perfect answer yet. because I feel like when I try to break down the macros in the way I would like to see them, I feel like it may be too much fat. So I'm working on that. But when I look at the wheel of macros on a chart, for me, if I've had a good day, if I've had a good day, um, more than 2/3 of my calories have come from protein and fat. Okay. And in that protein and fat part of the wheel, the more than 2/3, probably 3/4 of my macros for the day, then I try to make sure they're about split. So equal protein and fat on that wheel of where my calorie makeup is. Fat has more calories than protein, so it's not like a gram of fat per gram of protein. But if you're using one of those, I would just try and that's what I did was just tried to make sure that my carbohydrates stayed low for the day, that I was prioritizing proteins and fats, and that those proteins and fats were pretty balanced. Um, and then that should help. Okay. Along with that, though, if you're like me and I was doing that for years and still not getting better, and I was probably still doing well because I had that dietary lifestyle and I was working out about 3 hours a day, 6 days a week to become that world champion. I think that's kind of what held I was still insulin resistant, but kind of held it at bay from turning into full-blown diabetes. But once it did, how I reversed it, even doing the keto and watching my food and stuff, was just the system that I talked about. A tea in the morning, a pre-meal drink, because that really fills in the gaps nutritionally that we're having that are causing the insulin resistance in the first place. And this is my new favorite term. Sorry, is calorie dilution. And I had to listen to that like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, wait, what? What? How did he say that? What did he say? So, yeah, if we're talking about diluting the calories so that they're just not spiking your blood sugar so quickly, this is what works for that. This is the piece that dilutes the calories, slows down the delivery of the carbohydrates, but it also helps you feel full before you eat, helps you stay feeling full because it's diluting those calories and slowing them down. So you stay full longer, and that's the goal of the system. You guys, it's in my profile link. I'll drop a link here. Melba, do you have any more questions for me before we hop off today? Tomorrow we are going to talk about GLP-1s a little bit more in depth about the tea, because the tea is turning out to be the really revolutionary piece of this whole system. And so I want to dive into that tomorrow. Other than that, I have talked about 10 minutes longer than I intended. So I'm going to hop off. We'll see you guys in the morning. Thank you for joining me. If you want to do the system, if you want to know more about it, if you just want to have a chat with me, I'm not pushy. All of that information is in the link in my profile, and I will drop it here on Facebook and YouTube again today. But please understand with Hashimoto's, can I look and see if your order went through? Yeah, let me take a look. Melba, let me take a look at that as soon as I hang up, and I will text you, okay? This and you guys know how to keep me on here, don't ya? Don't ya? Um does this affect your gallbladder? Absolutely it does. So it absolutely affects your gallbladder. In fact, so much so, I'll say this, and I haven't done one on the gallbladder. I can do that next week if you guys would like. But absolutely it affects your gallbladder. I have no gallbladder now. So insulin resistance really impacts your liver. It impacts so many things inside of your gastrointestinal system, including how much they can contract and how healthily it contracts. Your gallbladder has to contract in order to move bile through, bottom line. And when that slows down due to insulin resistance, it starts slowing the emptying of your gallbladder. Now you start forming stones. Now you have problems. I ended up in the hospital 2 hours from death from a severe gallbladder attack, had to have my gallbladder removed, and it all started from insulin resistance. I would still have a gallbladder today had anyone said any of this to me years ago. Nobody addressed it. Nobody said, hey, your liver's at risk, your gallbladder suffering. Maybe we should take a look at insulin resistance. Okay. Nobody said that. And so now I have no gallbladder. Now it's even harder for me to lose weight. Now it's even harder for my thyroid to function properly. Those things all happen after your gallbladder gets taken out. And women who, so here's the thing, even though I still have some excess weight because of no gallbladder, because of thyroid, because of whatever, I still want to address my insulin resistance. So I'm going to always address that to make sure that I'm not causing more of that kind of damage throughout my body in other areas, eyes, teeth, heart, lungs, all of it. So yeah, it affects your gallbladder, and getting your insulin resistance under control soon enough can absolutely save your gallbladder. So I hope that helps. I will see you guys tomorrow. Melba, I'm going to take care of your question here in just a second, and um, we'll talk soon. You guys have a great day. Melba, I forgot for a second. I was still on here. Have you? Can you hang out here for just a second, Melba, while I look you up and see if it's in there? Give me just 1 minute. I'm so over these allergies. It's crazy at this age of life to be dealing with allergies. So it looks like you did have an order go through, and let me do a little bit more looking. So I see an order for March. I see that your next order should go out April 29th. Today is April 4th, and that last one March 29th. So if you want to hang out for just one more second, let me see if I can find the tracking information for that. And if we have that, then let's hop over to text and I'll fix it. Yeah, dead. Well, and then rain when it rains, which I love the rain. But for me out west, I didn't have this kind of allergies when it rained. But when it rains, it's actually kicking up mold spores. So now I'm around stimulants that I'm not used to, and it's been really heavy rains this spring. So that's just making it worse, as much as I love the rain. And I keep my window open, which is probably making my allergies worse because I love the sound of rain. Let me look at this for you real quick. So there is a tracking number for your March, and it actually says it's out for delivery. It should be delivered by the 7th, is what it's telling me. Okay, does that help? I hope that helps. We can text. I know how to text you, so I'm going to shut this off, and we can have our private time in our private time. I'll talk to you soon, Melba, but it should be arriving within the next day or two. Okay, have a good